My name is Mario Reynoso. My pronouns are he, him, él, and I'm located in what is now Los Angeles. I just moved here about a week ago, and I moved from Washington, D.C. after spending my entire life there. So, if anyone's in LA, I'm always willing to take food and beverage recommendations. But let's just give it a couple more minutes. Audrey, I see you're here. It's good to see you as well. Audrey was partially responsible for helping me get to where I am, so I'm always happy to see her around. All right. You're too kind. So let me go ahead and get started then. We're about 18, so let me get started. So once again, my name is Mario Reynoso. My pronouns are he, him, él, and I'm based out of Los Angeles. And we're having this session today because I wanted to really not just us, but take it even really have a conversation about the topic of getting into tech without a bachelor's degree. Because while I am so happy for all the people who get their degree, do the hard work, and like really get through it, there really is a huge population of people who don't have that degree. And like, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I don't have a high school degree. I was a high school dropout. I got a GED. Um, and I'm certain there are a lot of stories like mine of people who had to make a decision between finances, family, caregiving, and that leads to you just say, I can't do college, I can't do university, I can't do that 4 year commitment because I have to support family, I have to support, I have to support, my siblings. And we often make those sacrifices in order to make sure that we ensure that future generations and or future, our siblings or our parents can be taken care of. But I know that I'm going to be the first one to tell you that my trajectory to getting from where I was to now was not easy. And sometimes I want to say it was luck, but I don't really recognize, I think it was my own hard work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started with a little bit of my background. So um, I was about 17 years old and I dropped out of high school because the 2008 financial crisis was happening. My mother got laid off from her housekeeping job and she couldn't see. She was having vision problems. So, and also my 16-year-old sister had a kid. So there's a lot of things happening at that time that led to me eventually deciding to drop out of high school and support my family. Um, I was working retail, dishwashing, all kinds of different roles at that time. Most teenagers work. But I had to kind of make a decision about whether or not I could go to school or not. And this was a time where there was a lot of gatekeeping about who can get a scholarship and who's going to get a scholarship. 2008, 2009, if you're out there trying to apply scholarships, people wanted, a 4.0, 3, 3.5, no, high school degree. If you had a GED, you were kind of laughed out of the room to get a scholarship. So I could never find the financing to get a scholarship. I was eligible for Pell Grants, but that would never have been enough for me to cover the cost of university at that time. So what I ended up doing was I ended up actually pivoting myself into a role where I thought I might be able to really grow a career in, and that was operations. And you'll see time after time again that operations are one of the few places, especially in a lot of tech companies, where a traditional 4 year degree isn't necessary. And often these roles involve, working with a lot of working with a lot of people. They're very client focused. They're very people focused. But operations, I've always found to be a really great segue into a tech career. Which is why I say to anyone out there who's working in operations and you're trying to get into tech, first of all, you're already in tech if you're working for a tech company. Don't ever say that operations in tech is not tech. That is tech. But secondly, this itself is a journey that you can do. The whole idea of a 4 year degree in tech is being thrown out the window. And there's so many avenues and opportunities for you to achieve this. I myself took the bootcamp route. I ended up going to General Assembly, did a 4 year did a 6 month part-time program. I got my certificate, and I was able to really lean on my experience, not as someone who did coding, but as someone who has already been in the tech world. I had spent 2 years working for a tech company called Nava, who was great, and I was in an operations and finance role at that time. But I was really able to lean into my time there to be like, I have, I have seen the world of tech, and I can segue in. But not just that, but I was able to sell my experience as somebody who's been working for the last, since I was 16, leaning in, saying, I've been working constantly. I have this repertoire of skills of problem solving, skill management, and most importantly, humility. Humility to kind of look back and see the problems and to be like, okay, this is where I can better myself. This is where I can improve my skill set. And that takes time, and that takes a lot of humility. And I think when you start to do a transition from a role like operations into tech, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be somebody who has to make room for error. Even myself, I'm about 6 months into my current role, and I'm still making mistakes. And it takes time and effort to really get yourself into a role where you feel more confident. And you're going to consistently battle this imposter syndrome, because not only are you battling those people who, predominantly white people who went to nice Ivy League schools, you're also battling those like hardworking, first generation folks, and I don't want to say battling, I'll take that word back. I'll say you're going to compare yourself to them, these great people who, hustled and got that degree, and you're really, really, you're just comparing yourself to them. And the reality is, you're just like them. We all have our life stories. We all have battle stories, and yours are just as valid. And that's something I had to tell myself, that my own battle stories, my own experiences are just as valid as anyone who got their traditional 4-year degree. So when you start to go on ahead and you start to say, you know what, I'm going to go out there. I want to do this jump to tech. I want to become an engineer. Don't see your experiences as something that you have to discard. As a matter of fact, that is what props you up and gives you an ability to be like, I have a history of hard work. I have a history of getting things done. I have a repertoire of consistently bringing in, good quality work into a company and lean on that. I know I had to. I had to lean on that, because when I was doing those interviews and I'm sitting there, being asked about why I'm transitioning into tech, why don't you want to stay in this role where, we've kind of built, years of experience? It's because, I'm ready for something new. And that's when that aspect of humility really comes in, to say that I'm going to be making mistakes, and I'm going to be making all kinds of issues and honestly messing up code every once in a while, but you're here to learn. And so many employers out there want to hear that. To bring an aspect of humility and an openness to learn is more important to some employers than a 4-year degree. But it also leads me to say to those who do work at companies who are still gatekeeping with a 4-year degree, advocate for those to come in with a coding background, either it be a boot camp, self-taught, any kind of background. Advocate for those who are not being allowed in, because it's gatekeeping. It's a privilege to be able to get that degree. Even though it's hard work, it still is a privilege, because not everyone will always have the resources and capability to go back. And I'm saying this as somebody who did this transition, as soon as they turned 30, and it was, it's hard when you're sitting there comparing yourself to some younger people, and you're sitting there constantly doubting yourself. But I know that for myself personally, so much of the last couple of years has opened my eyes that it's possible. I've met so many great people who have done this transition without having a degree, and they leave me and so impressed. So I'm just hoping that I can keep up with them, and I'm hoping to also pay it forward by being here today and letting you all know that that's so possible. You got this. You can do this. You don't need a degree. It's not the end of the world. And not just that, what pays off more what pays off more not having a degree means that you have been pushing yourself to move forward. And that's hard work. moving yourself to this position where you can start looking for these tech jobs, that's hard work. So I first wanted to see if there's any sort of like questions or anyone had any questions at this point. I don't see any questions. All right. So at this point, this is where I kind of wanted to kind of just talk about a little bit about where, or so much of this, like, where so much of this really ties back into issues involving diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's so, when you compare the people who get a bachelor's degree versus somebody who does like a boot camps tend to skew more diverse. Boot camps tend to skew older, and boot camps tend to skew a bit more like, you have a bit more, different backgrounds there. Versus a lot of computer science degrees skew a lot more wider, younger, but unfortunately it skews a lot more privileged. So this is where I think that you really have to get yourself into a position where, like, you can't, if you're going to be advocating for this, advocate from a point of view that's diversity, equity, and inclusion focused, especially right now where the entire all of tech right now has their eyes on DEI and are like, what can we do? This is one way that we can start to really change the narrative and conversation. I know one thing for me is that now that I have, now that I'm here and I have my foot in the door, I'm continuing to advocate and not let go. Just because I'm here does not mean I get to stop and take a break. I need to continue advocating for those who are coming behind me as well. But I see there's some questions now. So how long did it take me to get my first coding job? So so after I graduated in April 2022, I got it about a couple of weeks later. I had started applications before that, and it took a lot of rejection. I had 250 rejections until I got a yes. So I had to really drive myself, I really had to like kind of keep myself like focused because rejection's hard. Nobody likes getting rejected. But after my graduation, it took me about a couple of weeks to get that first coding job. But I'll also say that a lot of these first entry level jobs are not very, sometimes not the most traditional ones. I actually kind of segued into what was a service desk role that had some coding involved, a lot of error triaging, but it got my foot in the door, and now I'm doing more development, and it took some time. So I would say probably between when I first started searching, probably about 3 months since I started putting in the applications. I started about midway about my boot camp, which was about 6 months. But let's see. Did you apply for jobs that require 4-year degrees? Yep, I did apply. I applied. If they required a 4-year degree, I applied. And but one of the things I actually did was on LinkedIn, I put in a keyword, boot camp. Because I was doing the boot camp, what that ended up doing for me was I would get those alerts saying boot camp, and you get a lot of people who are looking to hire from boot camps. Roles are specifically reserved for people who are self-taught or boot camps that don't come from a 4-year degree because of the issues of that equity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's one of the things I kind of did to navigate my job search is look up boot camps because people are trying to draw from these programs, or people who are self-taught, because it is diversity, equity, and inclusion issue. And yeah, I applied for those 4-year degree jobs, and sometimes I didn't hear back. And there was actually one time where I did hear back from somebody, and it was because I had that work experience, and they were more drawn to the work experience and what considered to be stability. I worked for some employers for 3 to 4 years at one point, so like they were like, okay, that draws somebody. And looking at Patricia's question, I think the Google IT and UX certificates are very valuable because what they say to a lot of employers is that you're willing to put in the effort into really increasing your skill set. It's less about the certification itself, but it's really about being able to say, I've really worked to make sure that I have these skills. And that's what I think the certificates really say. Some people would like to have them, they're nice to have, but if they're for free, I say take advantage of it, because trust me, there are other people out there who are getting these same certificates, and they they're just doing it for fun and just to have. But I think it really is something to really grab people's ideas. All right. Do you have any advice for military service members for a college degree looking transition? Totally. Jasmine, I would say that especially out there in our, currently right now with so many veterans, out there, coming back from, from serving, especially I know in the DC area, there's so many veteran focused organizations, a lot of veteran owned organizations who know the value of service, and trying to transition into an engineering role can be very difficult. I can't really recommend any specific boot camps myself, but I will say that the one I attended, General Assembly, was a relatively great experience. But I would say do your research and look. I'm sure there are many veteran groups where they can let you know about specific boot camps to help them do the transition. But I know that especially in DC with defense, with the defense presence there, you can find many people who are willing to say, military service is just as important as as a college degree. And it's really all about like just making sure that you go out there and you have to look and have your conversations. They're not, I hate networking. I'm not a networker. Someone who does that, those social old LinkedIn posts, that's not my favorite thing to do, but you can always look and see different places where there are veteran groups on LinkedIn or veteran groups, on different networking places where you can really find a plethora of resources. Yeah, totally. Skill bridge. That's totally. And I'm someone, like I said, I see this a lot in DC, so I know that like it's such it's such an important place to have, a conversation about how do we help our veterans really transition into different careers once they've wrapped up service, or even if they're in the middle of a career change. The resources that I use to prepare for interviews. For me, one of the things I always did was I looked at this. One of the things I always used to do is whenever I was to get like the coding, like the coding assignment, I would go on ahead and just look that up and just be like, okay, Google it, see what I need to figure out. But here's one of the things I'll say about interviews in general. A lot of them for me were an opportunity to really not not showcase how much I know, but what I know. And I know that my current employer, they knew that I was coming in as somebody brand new into coding, brand new to development. And they were okay with that. They just wanted to make sure that when I got my first seat at the table, when I got my seat at the table, when I started working, I would have the resources available to help me be successful at my job. But for me, a lot of the resources I used to prepare for interviews was goodness, continue those Hacker React, Hacker Ranks coding challenges. Make sure that you constantly have like a side project going on. Like if you're trying to break it, if you're engineering, always have a side project. Work on that website. Work on a side, just something small. Just keep yourself busy. I know I myself have kind of like let go some of JavaScript because I got the job. My role focuses more on SQL and Python than JavaScript, but I have to always be sitting there and keeping my skill sets sharp. Yes, add a project section to your resume. I had to admit, when it comes to like things like CSS, I'm just like, nope, nope. I cry in the middle of the CSS sessions we had at boot camp. But but what's important as well is also just show the code, show what you've done. That's something that like a lot of people are interested in, because they're trying to see how you figure out your different challenges, how do you think about, you know, how do you look at code? How do you read it? It's more than just being able to just read the lines, but like if there's a problem, what's the first place you go to figure out a solution? All right. And yeah, speaking about Operation Code, I would also say that, like, yeah, utilize these groups like Decadia. I was a part of Decadia. I'm a part of Out in Tech. There's different small, like, groups of people where you can really go and like really learn from. And like, if you have questions, ask and keep an eye on those roles, because number one, if someone's posting a role, it's more than likely that they're going to get a referral bonus. So do not be afraid to hit them up. Trust me, I got my referral bonus a few times, and I refer people at Nava, and that's real money. But after graduating boot camp, what kind of job roles do you research data analytics? I would say that a lot what I always constantly looked for was junior development, and as well as just looking into like, because of mine was more focused on software engineering and less data. So a lot of the things that I was looking at was focusing primarily on like junior development. So apprenticeships. I think one of the really big important ones that people don't really think about often is like taking a look at like internships. I know internships sometimes can be kind of a hit or miss depending on like on how they pay, but internships is a pretty interesting one. But for me, I applied specifically to a junior developer role, to a role where they specifically said 0 experience required, and they managed. They were impressed, and I got the job. But I did want to say one thing. With my current role, I actually had to interview twice because I interviewed for 2 different roles. But for the first role, they thought maybe I didn't have enough experience, but they called me back to interview for my second role, and they were like, "Come on back, we like you. We want to talk to you more." So that personality can really sell more than many people think. All right. How did you showcase your personality in the interview, and how did you tell your story? For me, honestly, it's coming in and making sure that like it's interesting because I did all these interviews virtually, so can be very it can be very like jarring because you don't know, you can't really read people's faces or reactions. But that's something you kind of have to tell myself, is that they can't really be reactive sometimes because they're supposed to be neutral. However, I will say that in my current role, the interview process was something where, when you're sitting there, talking to folks, just let yourself relax. There's nothing more frustrating, I think, sometimes when you're interviewing people than having someone who's just repeating to you pre-prepped, like data, information, contacts. And what you want to know is how this person will work on a team, especially if you're a junior developer. What they want to see a lot is, number one, humility, bringing in a sense of, I am wrong and I need to learn. Because when you're a junior developer, like, many times you're going to be doing what I consider to be as like the grunt work. So error triaging, documentation, you spend less time developing and more time actually just supporting other teams. But can you be open to that type of work? And I know there are some developers out there who are like, no, I don't want to do that. That's I just got this degree. I don't want to do that. I want to start making 150K, writing, lines of Python. And that's not going to always be the case. So for me, when I bring in my personality, is trying to kind of bring myself in a position where not to be so robotic, kind of relax a little bit, which is saying a lot because I'm somebody who's, I'm panicking right now doing this, but, it's not easy. So you have to really just bring yourself down. I think really bring myself grounded and be like, they want to talk to me for a reason. They want to talk to me for a reason. It's better they see who I actually am versus some like rehearsed part of myself. And for me, like telling my story was a lot of, honestly, it was a lot of being open, being frank with folks. When they asked me why I didn't get a degree, I tell them frankly, it was expensive, and I decided not to, so I passed on it. All right, and what was my interview like? Well, my first interview, oh my goodness, that was fun. The first one was where they gave me a very complicated piece of code, and they wanted me to dissect how I read the code. And for them, they knew it was a very complicated piece of code, but they also wanted to see, how do I read code? How do I look at it? How do I, like, what is my approach to errors? What is my approach to problem solving? And that's what a lot of coding is all about. It's like, it's less about development, actually typing things up. It's a lot more about problem solving. Even SQL is something where I'm sitting there like, how do I write this SQL in order to produce, the results I want it to produce? And at the end of the day, like, someone told me all we're doing is just research. Most of coding is just actual research and trying to figure out which one to build. So that's what my interview kind of was a lot about. Like, how do I approach code? How do I read it? How do I research it? And what do you, all right, but this question, what do you let me point out if you're, for me, I think what's always important to point out, especially if you're an internal candidate, is especially if you're trying to transition from like a role like where I was at, like operations, into something that's more engineering focused, is like point out that you have already contributed your part to this company. You've already been contributing your work and your labor to this company, and that you yourself are, like, for me, I think helping your internal talent grow and promoting them to grow and become part of the company, it enables them to stay. It's a long-term investment. It means that you have an engineer who is going to be extremely dedicated to the work because you gave him an opportunity, you gave him a shot. And while I strongly believe that you should not be loyal to a company to the cost of your own self-worth, to your own salary, it does allow you to open up doors to further yourself. And I think that if you were someone who's trying to transfer departments, like, you're already in. They already like you. They already know who you are. And if they're not willing to make the investment that they should to help you grow, then you're gonna have to, like, know your self-worth, know your own value. And that's something that you should really challenge and really bring into an internal interview. No problem, Patricia. You got this. You all got this. It's for those of you who did get a traditional degree. I'm always applying those who do, because I know it's not easy work. But I do believe that, like, we have to leave the door open for those who didn't have that capacity, who didn't have the privilege to be able to go to a regular institution. It's always funny because sometimes I feel like now at my current role, like, I feel more confident because I know things and I can sit there and assist on things, and I know how certain code works and how things work. And it's interesting to think that I'm only 6 jobs into this role. I'm only 6 months in, 6 jobs, 6 months in, and I'm telling this to you, who are still looking, still waiting. Like, you'll get there. It takes some time. And right now it's really difficult because the economy's tightening. So all these tech companies are, like, tightening their belts. So right now, what is the best opportunity for you to do is to continue to code. Don't stop coding. If you're, you better, just as hard as you are applying to jobs and you're trying to network and talk to people, make sure you're staying at the top of your skill set. Continue growing, and you'll get there. You will land that role. But most importantly, like, take some creativity. It takes some creativity to really find and be in a good place. So where you can feel happy in these careers. For me, like I said, I was looking for a developer role, didn't land with the one in the first try. I went with a service desk role, but now I'm shifting more towards development. But that time spent in the service desk role taught me so much about development that I didn't even know about. How to triage errors in your code, how to figure out issues that you might have, with simple things like SQL, and how to, like, fix databases. Like, these are skills, especially if you want to work on backend. These are skills that are valuable, and they're only going to continue to grow as you continue your career as a developer. Yeah. Mentors for me? Oh yes, I had mentors. Like I had people who, you know, for those of you who are doing the boot camp route, I will say that like, I had many nightmares where I would dream in Python and I'm like, my Python's broken. What am I doing? And I had people who I would talk to. It's like, what am I doing wrong? And most of the time, they're not even helping me with code. They're just helping me get rid of that imposter syndrome and support me and be like, you got this. You got this. All right. Like, trust me, there were months where I was, even still, I'm dreaming, like, what am I doing with my career? And like, it's okay because like it's the imposter syndrome kicking in. But like I would talk to my mentor, this great colleague of mine who was fantastic at like supporting me, keeping me grounded, and like he would just be like, Mario, chill. Like he's like once you're actually in, what you're gonna figure out is that the hardest part of development is actually the interviews. But when it's all those memes are true. Like once you're actually in, it gets a lot more easier. And it's like, and right now what you have is that drive. You have the drive to continue to learn. So he's been great. Billy, my mentor, was fantastic at this, and I hope to pay it forward one day as myself as as I start to grow my career and hopefully get more and more experience under my belt. But like I said, nothing happens overnight. None of this happens overnight. It takes a lot of work, and when you don't have a 4-year degree, you're already going to be facing a lot of odds. But fight for your seat at the table because you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. And things are changing. When I just saw a statistic saying that I just saw something in the news about how like for years the federal government required degrees, actual 4-year degrees for any sort of developer role they would contract out for. And now they're saying, okay, fine, we can do 4 years of experience. Like that is starting to break, and I'm hoping to see more of that, especially as people grow. And honestly, one of the really reassuring things about where I'm at right now is most of my colleagues come from boot camps. Most of my colleagues were not computer science majors. Most of them they only got an you know, degree. And I really appreciate that, to be in a place where it's like, I'm not the only person that has done this in my company. A whiteboard challenge. So I actually have not been in a whiteboard challenge. I've not done that. I had to say that like, yeah, no, I have not been part of a whiteboard challenge. Like it's surprising. I feel like I see more of that for like designers, but I haven't been a part of that. The only thing that I have done that was related to like a whiteboard challenge was I would do like a coding a hackathon. But I haven't done, because of the pandemic and because people kind of like stopped meeting up in person, I've kind of taken a break on those. But no, the whiteboard challenges I never got to do it. But like that was always, I think we did those a lot more of our designers who are applying for roles, but less with the engineers. Sorry, I couldn't answer the question. And I see, what would I do differently to get? Honestly, the only regret I have is that maybe I could have done this a couple years earlier. But at the same time, everything happens for a reason. I mean, a big part of me thinks that, like, the company I worked at before where I am now, when I started doing the boot camp, I was working for them. They were a tech company. Unfortunately, I could not get a role with them as an engineer because there weren't any open, especially for a junior developer. So I had to look outside of my current company. And that's when I found Last Call Media, where I work at now. And they were really willing to throw me a bone and be like, come on in, we got you. So I think the only regrets, maybe I could have started earlier, but at the same time, everything kind of happens when it happens. And I think that I really appreciated that. So I think the only thing was start a little earlier, but that's all right because I'm really happy where I'm at now. Also, one off topic thing. Learn Bash. Oh my goodness, learn Bash. Every time I'm like on Bash, trying to remember Bash, command. I'm like, shoot, what was that again? It's like the one thing I think I should have focused a little bit more on. Bash. React, that right there is like up and coming. That's like, well, not upcoming, it's here. React is here. And everyone's looking for React left and right. But let me also say this as well. I saw a job posting a few days ago looking for COBOL, which has not been used in like decades. So you'd be surprised what languages are going to stick around. But yeah, React is everyone's using React. I've gotten my React down to a pretty comfortable level, but I've also started learning other languages. I actually got to attend my first like engineer conference. I went to a DrupalCon, which was in Prague, company paid, super exciting. But it was exciting to kind of learn about a new, it was a CMS and learning about a different type of CMS and something I'm used to. And it was a challenge. And, that's kind of about what it's all about being a developer, is these different types of development that I may not be familiar with, but I kind of have to get on my comfort level for. But yeah, React is there. React is always going to be there. But I also always say that, like there's so many coding languages that sometimes they make a comeback. And it was interesting to see that posting, looking at people who knew COBOL. COBOL was like the old language that's used to use in a lot of government agencies. Angular as well. Angular, React. These are all super important languages that really will keep you up to date with what's going on right now. But once again, this is my biggest, one of the things I always tell everyone. Once you're actually a developer, take advantage of those professional development funds and continue growing your skill set, because React is happening right now, but we're 5 years away, 4 years away, but the newest language coming in, the newest, tech is always changing. And it's always going to be something where you have to continuously allow yourself to learn new things. It's funny that for someone who, I did not get a 4-year degree, but I'm consistently having to learn new things, and that's okay. All right. I know that there are other things happening today, and I know that we're talking about maybe sticking around for some time, but if there aren't any more, is there any more? I don't know if anyone else has any more questions, but if not, I can go ahead and wrap this up. But I wanted to at least give one takeaway, which is that, I continuously struggle myself personally with imposter syndrome because I don't have that 4-year degree. It's something that I know I'm always going to have for the rest of my career. And learning how to manage it and kind of being basta, chill, no, and just be like pushing it away. It's that's a battle within yourself. But these are things that I think that we should be more open about. There are many engineers out there who, because of that imposter syndrome, don't tell people that they don't have a 4-year degree. But there's many people out there like me, and I think being able to be open and be very frank about our experiences is important. And I hope that this conversation can help you once you got your foot in the door, and once you got yourself in a position where you can pay it forward. Be open about your story, because we ourselves as people are so we're so we allow ourselves to kind of prop up an image of ourselves that sometimes can be kind of difficult. But I think that that's changing a lot. Being open about our stories is something that is so important, especially as we continue to really be upfront about our backgrounds. And that's something that I've decided I don't want to be. I don't want to be somebody who hides myself, my own story. So yeah, you know what? I don't have a bachelor's degree. I was a high school dropout. My family was on Medicare, TANF, all the welfares. We were on all the welfares. And I just don't care, because I'm proud of my story. I'm proud of where I come from. So I hope that you all are able to take away from this and be like, you know what? Switching también, I got this, so take that away. And I see one question came in about why there are not many Latinx people in tech. For me, the biggest reason why is predominantly this issue right here. where you don't have that degree and you tell yourself, I can't do it. I can't do it because, you need to, be you have to do calculus. You have to, there's so many, I think it's so many myths about tech out there that really scare us off. And, you don't have to be the, the smart one in the family in order to get into tech, you don't have to be that person, who has to constantly fight, to, to, that has struggling for your life in order to be where you're at. I think that's what it is. We have such an imposter syndrome and expectations about what we can do as a community. We see tech as something for the gringos, but we don't see it for ourselves. But I'm hoping to see that change. And I'm hoping that places like Taqueria can change that conversation. And not just for people like us, but for people who are, other populations, other minority groups, who are underrepresented as well. This is space like this is important because we are the we are the exceptions. Although in my personal case, I like to say that we're actually the truth. But there's always going to be this, this myth that this isn't for us. We're more than just housekeepers, construction workers, which are good jobs, and jobs with a lot of, who are very honorable and very, very good. But at the same time, we as a community, these tech jobs are some of the few segues out of poverty. So that's why I consistently push this to people, be like, if you don't have that degree, these roles can help you provide generational wealth for future generations. It can help you do more for your family within one generation than other positions, other jobs. And you don't have to love coding. For me, coding it's not a lifestyle. It's my job. I like it, but it's not my lifestyle, and that's okay. Because it doesn't have to be anyone's lifestyle. All it has to be for you is the thing that pays your bills, and that's okay. But with that, I can go ahead and give some people some time back. I really appreciate folks who came out to chat. I'll hang out a little bit if anyone wants to chat and just have a conversation. I'll be around until 3:30. So yeah, take your time. I'll be here. So best of luck to everybody. And let me actually drop my LinkedIn in case people want to chat even more. So let me actually find my LinkedIn. I should have that pulled up, but like I said, I'm not a big LinkedIn person. For me, Brian, my long-term goals, it's funny, like a couple of years ago, all I wanted was remote work, the comfort to work, and wherever I want in the world, which I now have. So now my long-term life goals is to continue growing my skill set. I want to go from a junior to a senior developer in the next couple of years. And that means learning more, taking the opportunities, that I have my professional development money and taking more courses, continue to grow, continue to really grow that skill set. That's my long-term goal. That, and I also have a wedding to plan for, so I'm hoping that kind of goes smoothly. But yeah, totally. So those are my long-term goals right now. Like really continue to grow in this, continue to learn more about React, continue to learn more Angular, Drupal, different types of development that are just outside of the generic front end, back end spectrum. So really trying to learn more. But with that, yeah, if anyone wants to hang around and ask questions, I'm here. So yeah, I'll stick around. It's for about another 15 minutes. Exactly, Brian. You gotta live. That's the thing. You gotta live. Once you're actually here on this side, like, yeah, you just gotta live. And like, that's the thing about me that like, I was always just working like part-time jobs to like get myself, to pay the bills. And like now that I actually have like a little bit more money, a little bit more like, more, I actually have a 401k to worry about now. It's like nice to not have to like, to have that free time. Like you have so much free time now. Because sorry, I'm not that type of person that works more than 40 hours. My company told me we're not billing you more than 40 hours, so 40 hours you're done. So personal development is really important right now. Growing friendships, growing family, hanging out with family, seeing people. going on vacation. Gotta go on vacation now. Exactly, exactly. And like I feel like because I grew up watching everyone in my family work a part-time job, like I had to do it. And even still to this day, like having free time kind of drives me up the wall. I'm like, I need to get a side gig, I need to work, I need to do something. But like I'm like, I just recently had a conversation with someone where they're like, you think the gringos are like working a side job and doing all these things? No, dude, you gotta chill, calmate. Like live your life. Like go live your life. Like is it like it's interesting because I'm actually exploring more countries outside of just my home, outside of Mexico now. I'm exploring, I went to Prague, I'm going to Chile at the end of the year. I'm going to, I'm traveling more, I'm doing more because I have this free time now. We all gotta like just get our, we all gotta like keep it together, man. I get mad sometimes because I'm sitting there being like, why are you stressing out about a part-time job? That you go work that part-time job and you tell them you're going on all these vacations, they're going to be like, no, no, we're good, we're good. Exactly, Audrey. Yes, I know. Rest is a revolution. I cannot tell you that. Although these days I've been working East Coast, so I'm in LA. My company's based on the East Coast. But I decided to continue working East Coast hours, so I'm getting up like at 5:50 in the morning. Getting myself ready, be online at 7, and I'm done at 2. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have so much free time. What do I do? Like the free time is real. I can't believe I've become an early riser. Exactly, exactly. And you know what? It makes me sad when I go to places like Europe and I don't see more of our people. I don't see more Latinos out there because we don't get to travel as much. We're always going back to like the homeland. There's nothing wrong with the homeland, but sometimes we gotta get out and see other cultures, people, continents. That's something that makes me like. I've been like sometimes on TikTok, I'll like see Latinos who travel. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want to see. I want to see us travel more. We deserve it. We have, like we have so much of our own. We come from amazing cultures ourselves, and if we travel, we get to share more of our people and who we are abroad. Goodness, I was in Prague and I had this Ukrainian guy who stopped me, who's like, "Can I practice my Spanish with you?" When I was walking around, he just got to Prague from Ukraine during, because of the invasion. He was like, his like wife is like, she's Spanish. And he wants to learn more Spanish, so that was like a fun experience. This cross culture thing. I think you can do both, really, depending on how familiar you are. But like, I think about one of the most important things about recruiters is that like, let me tell you this: they are go if you talk to a recruiter, guess what? They want to get you a job because they're going to be your best friend. They're going to walk through the process because they want to get those quotas in. A lot of recruiters often have quotas, and they often make they'll make a bonus if they hire someone. I know that the one thing about my old company, our recruiters, they make a bit of money. You know they're they're pulling in people because they want to get paid. So I think if you reach out to somebody, they're going to be totally happy, especially because that means that it makes their job a little bit easier. Yeah, Brian, it is sad. It's like it's hard when like it's hard leaving something that we're comfortable with, and that's what I found with it's like leaving that comfort zone. And goodness, I would sit there and scream and rant about this all my life, but like sometimes we have to leave our comfort zone, which goes back to the coding. learning how to code, learning how to develop. It's like it's leaving our comfort zone. Even though I think might show my age a little bit here, but even I used to do HTML and MySpace, 15 years ago. I still wasn't feeling comfortable with what I was doing. And even then today, I'm like, I know my CSS is not the best, but like I can figure out. I can do some problem solving. Exactly. The image sources, yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, like you will see that the most difficult things are like on the other side. Yeah, and that's what I ended up figuring out is that like even though like I felt like I was having this like total imposter syndrome, like yeah, it's not easy to do a career change, especially if you're like if you work in a role where like it's a little bit non-traditional. I know people who used to work as cook chefs, people who were delivering pizzas, and they were like, like it's not the easiest thing to convert to go into a career like this. It's not their comfort zone, and you have to push and push and push, and it's like you finally get to like, you finally get hired, and you finally make it across the finish line. Like it's like you're kind of like, why was I so? It's kind of like that coming to Jesus moment. You're like, wow, it's all like clicking to me. Like, why did it take me so long? If I could change one thing in tech, what would it be? I think personally for me, I mean, once again, talking about the whole topic we're talking about here is that like we have to have an honest conversation about the like some of the racial gaps that we have. Latinos are so underrepresented in tech, and not just Latinos. You can see the same thing as well for the Black community as well, and that causes issues when you're sitting there making product. My background's in civic tech, so I work a lot with the federal government and state governments, and sometimes just sitting there while talking to people about something as simple as MFA, and you have to sit there and be the voice in the room saying, hey, as somebody with lived experiences, not everybody has a cell phone. There are people who change their cell phone numbers at 3 times a year because they have prepaid phones and they get a new one. That's the lived experiences for many people. And I think that if we can stop some of the gatekeeping regarding to like a 4-year degree and really be open about like talking to people who are self-taught, who did a boot camp, or more importantly, honestly, just curious, who are just curious about tech. If we can be more open to people like this who want to learn, when they have that seat in the table, when they're feeling empowered, we discover that not everyone has the same experience, and that can change things like UI, user, interfacing, how you interface with the public. I know that one of the most important things for me is when my previous employer was working on a project involving the state of California. One of the big topics you had to constantly talk about was you can't talk about California without talking about Spanish speakers. You can't have a conversation about Spanish speakers without talking about how we can't use, Google Translate Spanish. You can't have a conversation about Spanish speakers about trying to be like, oh no, we can just, use that. Goodness, it's like the worst thing ever when you go on a website and they have that Google Translate button on the upper right corner, and it's like just translate the page. A lot of government websites do that, and it's not okay. But luckily, we had a fully fledged Spanish portion of the website, as well as Mandarin and Tagalog. Exactly. We shouldn't like many local governments and school, also not just local government, but school districts as well, still really depend on Google Translate to be like their translator. And I know a lot of it is resources. Sometimes they don't have the resources, or but you need to, but like having someone who can advocate and be like, this isn't okay, can really transform the way people interact with government. And this is, it sounds like a little bit like the civic tech conversations happening in the other room, but like, you do have a conversation about how we have to kind of really be in a position to have conversations about who we are and like what value do we bring in to, you know, to companies. And 100% Oscar, yeah, 100%. I was, because I mentioned earlier, a lot of people of color typically fill roles that are operations focused, HR focused, accounting, roles that customer service that typically pay less than what an engineer does, which gets to a whole nother conundrum about equity and inclusion. We have the diversity there, but you got to have the equity, and you got to have the inclusion. You got to let people who are curious, who work in customer service roles and want to learn more about development, and have them move into a development role. With that, you have to be able to support that transition. The best talent you find is often within your own, within places that are completely, overlooked. And nothing grinds my gears more than people who use customer service roles and operations roles to prop up their diversity, their diversity rankings. It's always frustrating to me when it's like, yeah, you have a lot of diverse folks, but they're also the lowest paid staff, as well as the most underappreciated and most overworked staff. Yeah, 100% Oscar, agreed. All right, well, I know we're about to hit our time here, so let me go on ahead and just drop my link. Once again, drop my LinkedIn. I once again exit out. Once again, close it out. But if you're ever up for a chat, feel free to message me. I'm always around. I will always apologize ahead of times that I don't check my LinkedIn as much as I should be, but I've gotten a little bit better about checking it more regularly. So if you do send me a chat, I do apologize. It may take me a day or two to get back to you, but please do not be a stranger. Best of luck to you as you continue to search. And most importantly, like, you got this. Like, if you are already even just thinking about entering tech, like, you've already gotten to step one. And once you start to really learn more about development and see how diverse the world of development is, that it's not just sitting in front of a computer all day and typing, you're going to realize that there's so much more to what you can contribute in tech. And it's not just those customer service roles. You can do so much more than just sitting there, having to be the face of the problem. We have so many brilliant people in our community, and many of them, like I said, did not have that traditional 4-year degree. So if you're trying to figure this out, you got this. All right, folks. I'll let you all go. Best of luck. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Christina, you got this, right? Boot camp. You already got through the hardest part. You got this. Thank you all. Well, thank you all. Super excited to see what all of you do with your careers. It's not easy, but you got this. All right.